Hello, and in this video we're going to be learning about, I'm just going to be revamping this scene a little more colorful, and we're also going to learn about an important concept called Time.delta time. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this scene looks pretty bland right now, right? And there's not much to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this game object, and about time, again, I rename it to something more meaningful. Let's call this the floor. I'll hit R and I'll scale it up on the Z just a little bit. I'll probably leave it at about 200 on the Z axis, and I'm gonna select my player and main camera and move it to the back, move it all the way to the back, somewhere around there. And I'll move my main camera up so it has a better view of the player and the entire scene ahead of it. So now I'll be giving my player a color. So how you can do this, you can right click in your assets folder, create a new material, name it whatever you want. I'll call this player matte, and I will give it a material. Let's make it blue, and you can drag it onto the player. And don't forget to hit overrides and apply all, so you can apply the changes to the prefab. And I think the main camera might be a little too high, so I'll just bump it down and move it in front a little bit. There we go. I think that looks decent. Yeah, that looks decent. Alright, and now let's learn a little bit about Time.delta time. Right, so currently, just remove that here. Sorry, I was just experimenting a little bit. So currently, depending on your frame rate, if a person has a higher frame rate, this add force method will be applied every frame, and because they have a higher frame rate, it'll be applied more every frame. And so the player, which is what we're adding a force to, will move differently depending on your frame rate. And how can we fix this? We want the player to move consistently no matter what your frame rate is. We need it to move, no matter how high your frame rate is, we need it to move the exact unit that we want it to. We don't want it to change depending on your frame rate, because that gives an unfair advantage to a person with a higher frame rate. It has a really simple fix. You just need to multiply the speed, and actually I'll rename the speed to something like Z-axis force, and copy this name and put it here, Z-axis force, and I'll multiply it by time, and that should come up in your autocomplete, and it should say the interface to get time information from Unity.delta time. And now Time.delta time basically just is the amount of time it took for the previous frame to render. And don't worry, this is pretty hard to understand, but as you use it more and more in Unity, it gets much easier. So if I hit play, make it fall and hit W, you can see it's being moved, and if I hold W, it moves farther, faster, and it's moving consistently. So if I were to have a higher frame rate, which I currently don't, it should be moving at the same speed. And another change I would like to make is this update method is being called every frame, and again, every frame depending on your frame rate. And we don't want that. We want it to be called no matter how high your frame rate is. Again, we want it to be called at a fixed amount of time. And you can't multiply methods with Time.delta time, so you can't do this. Time.delta time should be pretty obvious. You can't do this, so I'll remove this. And instead, what I'm going to do, Unity has another built-in function. It's because we're messing with physics here, add force is basically messing with physics. We want it to move a fixed amount of frames. We want this method to be called a fixed amount of frames no matter how high your frame rate is. So Unity has a very neat function for that. It's called private void fixed update. And this is just called every physics update. So I'll just because we are messing with rigid bodies and physics, change to fixed update to ensure the code here gets called every fixed frame, and it's going off the screen, so I'm just gonna hit Option Z to enable soft wrap and Command S. And we're into Unity. Should again not see much of a difference. If I were to hit play right now, ball falls down, hit W, should not see much of a difference. Ball still moving pretty smoothly across the entire scene. Oh, power cut. Alright, I'll see you in the next video.